One point that Mercedes team principal Toto Wolff has constantly stuck to is that they will not be developing their 2021 car, as their focus is now completely on their 2022 car. This sentiment was reiterated after the Styrian Grand Prix as well. However, Mercedes' soon-to-be Chief Technical Officer James Allison has now contradicted those statements while speaking to the F1 Nation podcast. I'm your host Dillon Shelley, and first up on Formula World, James Allison contradicts Wolff on 2021 development plans. Allison began by explaining why they have been on the back foot in 2021. Ever since the rule changes that were introduced aerodynamically for looking after the tyres, we have found it hellishly hard to find the sort of performance gain rate that we found previously prior to those rules. He then confirmed that they still have a few updates to come in 2021. We have a reasonable number of things that are going to make our car faster in the coming races. Let's hope they prove sufficient. He was then asked about Wolff's statements that had categorically denied any more development of the 2021 car. What Toto points out is that next year's rules are a big and hairy affair, and they demand a huge amount of our attention, so most of the focus of our factory has switched over to the performance discovery for next year. But that doesn't mean that there aren't still things in the food chain from prior to that focus switch. Furthermore, it isn't all of the factory, and we are only one of two factories. There's also the power unit factory, and there is a little bit more to come from the power unit. He signed off by hoping that these changes can make the difference. So there's more aerodynamic change in the offing, a little bit of PU, we hope, on the delivery side, and just a few things that are not quite as tidy as we would wish that we still have an opportunity to put right while this season is still very much alive and hot. Fast feed. Red Bull advisor Helmut Marko has suggested that Mercedes are now missing their 50 horsepower advantage that they've had for 7 years. He also feels that the fastest car on the straight is now the McLaren with a Mercedes engine. They are not used to this situation at Mercedes. Mercedes team principal Toto Wolff has explained that second and third at the Styrian Grand Prix is not a bad result. However, what's tough is that it's been the first race really in 8 years where they are just lacking the pace. He added that this week they'll be scratching their heads and trying to look at the race and see is there anything they could have done better in terms of setup direction. He also thinks they found some clues for qualifying, but could they have optimized on race pace, as that's always a balance. It's very interesting. F1's managing director Ross Brawn feels that at the beginning of the year Mercedes outraced Red Bull. That is not the case now. It's been the opposite in the last couple of races. Mercedes are trying too hard and they've stumbled a bit, Brawn proposed. He also pointed out that Ferrari's Charles Leclerc made the mistake in the first place. He was a bit clumsy at the start, so that is why it is a dilemma as he deserves driver of the day. Formula 2 Championship leader and Alpine test driver Guan Yu Zhou will borrow Fernando Alonso's car for FP1 at this weekend's Austrian Grand Prix. He will become only the second Chinese driver to get behind the wheel in a Formula 1 practice session. Red Bull team principal Christian Horner thinks that the whole team's just working tremendously well at the moment. The only hiccup they had in that race was the pit stop for Checo, but other than that, it was an immaculate performance, Horner surmised. He added that Checo drove the wheels off the car. It was a shame that the pit stop didn't go better for him because he would have maintained the track position pretty easily. Williams' George Russell is just gutted for the team, to be honest, after a power unit issue forced him to retire early from a point-scoring position in the race. He further explained how they were in such a great position. P8 on the medium tyre, they would have been able to pounce at the end. And he thinks that P7 was probably possible, ahead of Alonso, and there's 4 to 6 points is massive. It's the difference probably between P8 and P10 in the championship. Mercedes' Valtteri Bottas has stated that if they want to keep up with Red Bull, they can't do so much tyre management. His teammate Lewis Hamilton explained that it's much different. Obviously, back when they did have upgrades, they had great people who were constantly finding improvements. It's obviously now more flat, and yeah, it's just different. It was a great battle back then, Hamilton concluded. Can Mercedes find a good compromise between their qualifying and race pace for the Austrian Grand Prix? Head over to my community page to vote in the poll and let me know what you think in the comments. And if you like this video, feel free to subscribe and check out my others for all the latest in the world of Formula 1.